The films which you are about to see are the accounts of some of the most horrific maulings from one of South America's rarest apex predators. Originally from the small city of Porto, Brazil, which is located right here, 67-year-old Pedro Vaz Ferreira was a local farmer who regularly worked himself to the bones, providing what little he could for his loving family. Though not being a stranger to letting loose or being able to just relax, one of the major ways that Pedro loved to enjoy his time off was to be able to go fishing or hunting with his two sons, 32-year-old Davy and 25-year-old Hasu. Though being in South America and living in Brazil, the three main hunting grounds just so happen to also be the world's largest jungle, the incredibly dangerous Amazon rainforest. Stretching over almost 9 entire countries, this massive, incredibly diverse rainforest is home to some of the world's most deadliest predators found anywhere, including one of the biggest spiders in the world, Goliath bird eaters, cougars, sharks, piranha, various poisonous frogs, anacondas, panthers, jaguars, and about 1,000 other nightmarish animals that could all kill you in the literal blink of an eye. Which now brings us back to our story. On the fateful day of November 6, 2021, Pedro and his two sons set off into the jungle. And as they were slowly walking through the dense rainforest, the three were enjoying spending the time together as they were simultaneously trying to stay alert just in case anything happened. As they were walking though, the three would suddenly stop as they all simultaneously heard the sounds of a large animal walking by. And by hearing this, Pedro would then decide to walk forward a few paces by himself to see if he could get a better look as to what exactly made the noise. Though as soon as he did so, one of the Amazon's largest predators would jump out and pounce on Pedro, all within the span of a few seconds. And unfortunately for Pedro, the animal that had attacked him was the incredibly deadly, incredibly intelligent South American Jaguar. And before Pedro even had a chance to react, the almost 200-pound predator jumped on him, and in less than a second later, Pedro was plunged into an almost nightmarish situation. As now, not only was he now suddenly fighting for his life, he was also now having to do so in complete darkness. For you see, unfortunately for Pedro, as soon as the Jaguar pounced on him, the completely agile beast managed to claw Pedro's right eye, plunging him into a world of complete darkness almost immediately. Then, almost as if having his head placed into a hydraulic press, the Jaguar then proceeded to try and bite into Pedro's head, repeatedly crushing bones and breaking his nose in the process. Then, as Pedro was still fighting for his life, one of his sons started to run towards the Jaguar with a machete, which luckily worked to scare him off, as the hungry beast then ran back into the dense jungle tree line. Though not wanting to just let it escape, his son chased it into the jungle, eventually catching up with it and killing it just in case it decided to come back and finish its kill. Then, as Pedro was lying on the floor bleeding out profusely, his sons quickly gathered him up and placed him in their speedboat and brought him to the nearest hospital, known as Wilson de Mota Silveira, where he then stayed in a serious state until November 8th, where they then were able to transfer Pedro to a much larger hospital located in Anandua, which itself was an incredible 200 miles away. Miraculously though, Pedro only suffered through a partially disfigured face with some broken cheekbones, a broken tore up nose, and due to the Jaguar piercing his right eye, he was left completely blind in it. All in all though, Pedro would probably consider himself to be one of the luckiest people in the world, as he is one of the only people to have actually survived a Jaguar attack. Originally from the small rural town of Brasil Novo, 10-year-old Dilson Oliveira Paiva was a typical fun-loving kid who, like everyone else in the time, loved to explore the outdoors. And as it was currently the summertime, young Dilson would take every opportunity he could to go outside into the surrounding jungle and either play and enjoy nature, or he would take advantage of living next to one of the largest rivers in the world and go fishing or swimming to pass the time. Though, being in one of the most biodiverse ecosystems in the world, young Dilson would occasionally have to keep an eye out for such creatures like the Amazon river dolphin, anaconda, giant river otter, black caiman, sharks, jaguars, and a whole continuing list of some of the most deadliest animals in the world. Though because he was also brave and independent, our young friend would often venture into this harsh, dense world completely alone. Which now brings us to the fateful day of July 27th, 2022, when young Deersum would decide to venture out around 12 p.m. to his favorite pond, only a few miles away. Though in all reality, he wasn't that familiar with the area, as his family only recently moved to the region only a mere 6 months earlier. Though since he had such a huge love for exploring nature and fishing, young Deersum would leave and never look back. Unfortunately though, this would also mark the absolute last time that anyone would see our young friend alive. Meanwhile, a few hours later, as it was starting to get dark, young Deersum's mother would start to cook dinner and the family would start to get a little worried. Though knowing that their son was relatively close by and could take care of himself, they first tried to give him a chance to return on his own. Though as 1 hour quickly turned to 3 and there was still no sign of their young son, his father would quickly begin to worry and go door to door to all of his neighbors and asking for help to see if they can help retrieve his missing son. Then, as the search group made it down to the pond, Deersum's father was faced with the reality that something terrible had actually happened to him. As they all walked closer, they would see the young boy's tattered clothes thrown all over the place, which were also accompanied by traces of blood all over the riverbank. Then, as his father would take a deep breath, the group would start to look around the surrounding area for clues. And as the men were looking, about 164 feet away, one of the men would end up finding a truly grisly scene that would end up turning everyone's skin ice cold. It was the horribly mauled body of young Deersum. As the men slowly walked closer to the body, they would all notice multiple large paw prints all around him, as well as large claw marks all around his body. And the men could clearly see drag marks that were in front of the body, which just confirmed to them that he had been attacked at the pond, but then had been dragged away more than 100 feet. Though perhaps worst of all, and most likely the thing that sent everyone's hearts into their stomachs, as they all walked up closer, they could clearly see that the large cat also took the time to devour almost all of the young boy's face, leaving him skinned and horribly disfigured. The group then quickly gathered the young boy's remains and brought him to a hospital in the nearby town of Altamira, about 35 minutes to the east of where they were, where a post-mortem examination was conducted to determine the exact cause of death. The doctors then determined that it was most likely a jaguar that was a culprit, and coinciding with local eyewitnesses of jaguar sightings in the area, there were almost no other thoughts that there could have been another animal that made the attack. Unfortunately though, this was no ordinary jaguar that attacked the young boy. It was the incredibly rare black jaguar, and with only around 600 left in the wild, the local community took it upon themselves to hunt this apex predator down so as to not have another child taken, as the jaguar now knew how easy it was to take a child. The mob then found the jaguar a little ways from the original attack site, and with a quick machete blow to the cat's neck, were quickly able to put an end to the rare beast's life. Originally from the municipality of Cáceres near the border of Bolivia, 21-year-old Greg and his father John were both in the business of selling bait to fishermen, and would often themselves go on multiple fishing trips to catch that bait. These fishing trips were usually pretty important, as it was a means to provide for their family and also a way to bond together. Well, on Tuesday, June 20th, 2008, both father and son set off for the Paraguay River. The two were planning on staying on the riverbank for the next 20 days, but about 4 days into the fishing trip on June 24th at about 7 p.m., something truly nightmarish would happen. John would decide to walk down the bank a bit to do some quiet night fishing, while Greg decided to stay and get some sleep inside the tent near the bank. John would only stay gone for about 30 minutes, and as soon as the fish showed that they weren't interested, he decided that it was time to start heading back before it got too dark or too late. As soon as he returned back to base camp, he really wanted to wake his son up and talk about tomorrow's plans. Though as he returned and walked up to his son's tent, he clearly saw a slash mark surrounding it, and blood marks covered the entire scene. And upon seeing this gruesome sight, John would immediately feel sick in knowing that something horrible had just happened to his son. Then suddenly, he heard a loud noise coming from just behind him. As he panned over with his flashlight, he was confronted with a sight no parent should ever have to see. He saw the almost 300-pound jaguar dragging his son's lifeless body towards the forest behind him. And immediately upon seeing this, John would begin to yell and throw rocks at the beast to let his son go. But ignoring him, the beast only continued to drag his son towards the tree line. Then desperate, John ran over to his equipment and quickly radioed all of his friends for help, which luckily for him, they already lived close by. As the friends arrived though, the Jaguar had already disappeared with the body, so the three men now had to follow Greg's blood trails in order to find him. Luckily though, the men were able to locate the body about 213 feet away with no animals in sight. So using their flashlights and lamps, the three checked the area to see if there were any signs of the deadly jaguars left. Luckily though, the animal never returned to its kill, and after about an hour of waiting with the body, the men finally gathered up the remains and brought him to the nearest hospital a few miles away. Then the next morning, several friends went back to the campsite to retrieve their friends' belongings, where they found that both tents had actually been slashed, but Greg's tent was completely destroyed, along with all of his clothes that he had packed for the 20-day trip. Then, back at the hospital, officials were finally able to conduct an autopsy the following morning and determined that Greg had died of lesions to his head and neck. They were also able to see that the bite mark made to his neck was so powerful that the beast was able to sever his spinal cord, killing him instantly. He also suffered a cranial fracture that was so severe, part of his brain was exposed, further resulting in his death. As for the beast that killed him, he was never found, presumably still in the jungle, hunting and killing. And with that being said, thank you once again for joining me. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons and to turn on the notification bell for more content in the future. Goodbye for now.